What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Jonald, and ow, it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a one-off. Alrighty, guys, it's time for part 3. Let's go. I like this idea. I might come back to it someday because I feel like I had a good idea, and then as the weeks went on, this has been a rough time for me, and so I don't think I did it as much justice as I'd like. That being said, I did enjoy the idea. It was fun. I liked following through. I did appreciate the ending the way I wrote it. Maybe you'll disagree with me, but oh well, it's up to the interpretation. One thing of note beforehand, there is a word that I censor for obvious reasons, and I'll make it clear right now my point on this. I very clearly censored it because it's just not something anyone should be saying. There's no good reason to say it, and I know people will argue one way or the other. That's not what this is about. So, cool. You'll understand, and if you don't understand, that's fine. You don't need to. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy the one-off. The White Bastard, Part 3, by Jonathan Howe. Read to you by Jonathan Howe. Clarence had never been in a standoff before. Every muscle in his body was tense, waiting for the signal from his brain. What should I do? He thought, looking in all directions. He could try running to Robert's store, but the last he'd seen in his wanderings, it had been closed down. Still, Robert probably lives nearby. I could try to find his house. 2 of the white men approached on either side of Clarence. He took a few steps back, but they matched his pace. Gentlemen, Clarence started, but the lead man raised a gun. You're nothing, nigger, he snarled angrily. A shot rang out, deafening everyone. Clarence flinched, expecting pain somewhere, but nothing hurt. Across from him, the man dropped the gun, crying out and clutching his forearm. Clarence wheeled around, following the gazes of stunned men. Standing on a roof, covered in layers of cloth, stood a dark figure. The person jumped down, landing with a pistol pointed at the lead man. James, they said in a deep voice, we meet again. James, the man in the lead, yelped and took a step back. Do you remember what I told you last time I stopped your stupid acts of ignorance? No, James stammered, turning to flee. Another shot rang out, taking James in the back of the head. He dropped. Other men turned to run as well. The White Bastard, for this was clearly him, sighted down and ended 2 more of the men, leaving 3 to run off. Clarence stood for a silent moment, taking in the scene. He'd seen blood and death before. He'd been a child during the war. But this was different. It was so visceral. The unexpected stench of blood and the 3 corpses was enough to make him gag. Clarence turned away to look at the White Bastard. He was gone. Clarence looked around wildly. He can't have gotten far, he thought. A little way down the road, a shadow flickered. Clarence recognized the shape of a man running. He took off after the White Bastard. Their chase lasted a good 10 minutes. Clarence hadn't run like this since he was a youth, but he didn't want to let this story go. The bastard didn't even try to lose him in town, keeping to the main road until they were beyond crowded buildings. Once into more open lands, they took off through a field. The moon lit the night enough for Clarence to catch motion and follow. Up ahead, beginning to loom in his view, was a dark line. It stayed on the horizon, but was approaching fast. The bastard's forest, Clarence thought. He picked up his pace, hoping to catch the man before they reached the woods. I won't be able to find him if he makes it. Feet pounding, Clarence put his all energy into running. He got closer. 30 feet behind, 20 feet behind, 10. He got so focused on catching up that he missed the bastard stopping and sticking a foot out. Clarence sailed clean off his feet, flying a body length before crashing into the ground. As he squeezed his eyes shut and groaned, the bastard ran by. No, Clarence berated himself. Slightly bruised, mainly in his pride, he pulled himself up. Clarence followed, running into the bastard's forest. The moonlight shining through the branches was just enough to leave Clarence scared out of his mind. The bastard won't kill me, or he would have already, Clarence explained to himself, looking around nervously. But nocturnal creatures moved unseen but audibly around him. Clarence felt around in his pockets. he didn't have any method of making fire, as he'd been unprepared to run into the night. Clenching his fists in determination, Clarence walked deeper into the dark woods. "White Bastard!" Clarence yelled out to the forest. "My name is Clarence Freeman. I'd love to speak with you. Please come out." No one responded. Clarence continued on deeper into the wood. He didn't stop, but kept trudging forward at a determined pace. An idea formed in his head as he walked. "It's stupid," he acknowledged, "but it should work." Clarence yelled out every few seconds, trying to be as loud as possible. 5 minutes in, when he was really beginning to question his decision, Clarence saw a flicker of movement. "Finally," he said, turning to face it. Of course, it wasn't the bastard. Clarence hadn't been trying to attract him with the shouts. A large mountain lion raced towards him through the trees. "Help!" he screamed, lunging to the side. Another shot rang out, echoing through the woods. The lion yowled and collapsed. Clarence stood up again, looking around. The bastard had stepped out from behind a tree, pistol aimed at the big cat. "You are nothing if not accurate," Clarence said, dusting himself off. "Thank you for your assistance with the men and the mountain lion. Could I have a word with you?" The white bastard pointed the gun at Clarence. "No," they said in a gruff voice. Something about the tone struck a chord in Clarence's mind, but he let it go. "But I just want to have a quick interview for a paper I'm writing," Clarence explained. "I think you're doing a good thing, and I want the world to know." "What I do isn't good," they scoffed. "It's necessary." "And whose fault is that?" Clarence countered. "Not yours." "Still, I should not be celebrated," they said again. In that moment, Clarence heard what he'd been piecing together slowly. He studied the figure still pointing a gun at him. The light made it hard to tell, but he was growing more confident by the moment. "Now turn around and leave You're a woman," Clarence said in disbelief. The white bastard went quiet suddenly. "I wasn't certain a moment ago, but you're lowering your natural voice." "No, I normally sound like this." "As the bastard, maybe, but the person behind that mask is different." For a tense moment, neither moved. Finally, the white bastard lowered their gun. "How could you tell?" she asked, voice much more feminine. Even now, she had a relatively deep voice for a woman. The persona had just been exaggerated. "I could hear it in the back of your performance. Do I know you?" The bastard reached up and pulled down the cloth covering her face. It was the young woman who tended the caring matron. "Not personally, but we have met," she explained. Clarence's mind connected the dots, understanding how he'd picked up on the voice. He had heard her in the inn, but never really had a conversation. "And you do all this," he said, gesturing at her generally, "without getting recognized?" She grimaced. "Not by other white people, at least. That being said, I've been recognized once before. By William." "That makes sense," Clarence noted. "He does work directly next to you." "Anyways," the young woman said, "I can't have you writing about me in your paper. Especially not the truth about me." Clarence pursed his lips thoughtfully. "She's right. There's no way for her to continue unless I keep quiet. Despite the gruesome methods, the results speak for themselves." He looked her in the eyes. "A question, then, for my own knowledge." She nodded slowly. Why let everyone think the white bastard is a man?" She shrugged. "They believed that on their own. It wasn't worth trying to correct them." "But certainly they'd be able to figure out that none of them were the one attacking." "Clarence," she said, "prejudice runs deep." He smiled at his own words thrown back at him. The bastard pointed back through the trees. "That is the way out. Go home and write your article about something worthwhile." Clarence later learned that her name was Sarah. Her father had been a sheriff, and that's how she learned to shoot so well. William explained that only he and Mistress Callahan knew, refusing to do anything to help, but also refusing to tell. "Then why did Mistress Callahan want me here? Isn't that kind of like telling?" William shrugged. It was a question above his pay grade. Robert's words calling her a tyrant and Sarah's own words affected Clarence. When he did finally leave and go back north, He didn't write a piece on the White Bastard. It didn't feel like a story worth writing. What he did write was a piece called The Caring Matron, about a white woman who talked to anyone and everyone like they were a person. Whether you were a criminal in disguise or a black man from the North, Mistress Callahan wanted to know you. She wanted to know me so bad that she brought me into the heart of Alabama, Clarence wrote at the bottom of his article. I guarantee, no matter who you are reading this, she'd want to know you too. While there's a lot going on in Newport, Alabama, she's the one thing making it all worth it. And we're back. Yeah. So part of the idea at the beginning when I made this one-off series was just what if there was a white person who was like a vigilante against racial crime in like the 1800s America South. And then eventually I thought to myself, it'd be really interesting if that person was also a woman, because it's like this weird, not weird, but it's this interesting dynamic of not only are they fighting the like fighting the norm of we can do whatever we want because we're a superior race, but also it's fighting this gender norm of like it's a woman standing up and doing the defending and stuff. But then also I did like, as I was writing, I was like, no, this isn't like, I'd already placed the seeds, how Robert was like, it's a tyrant, they're not good. Like, the reason vigilantes are so hard to like actually root for is because they are outside of the law, and you want to go, yeah, they're doing good, but also the law exists for a reason. And yes, sometimes the law isn't doing what it should be, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can just stand up and take arms ourselves. And it's such a weird dichotomy that I think the ending was only right, because the person I really want to root for in Newport is Mistress Callahan, the person who treats everyone well. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other ideas, let me know in the comments. Hit that like button and share it with your friends. But until then, I will see you next week. Neat. Okay, bye.